He should have died the moment her blood touched him, but instead the vampire king froze like he had just remembered how to feel. The rain had been falling for hours, turning the narrow alley behind the restaurant into a river of dirty reflections and flickering neon light. Emily Carter pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out the back door, her shoes already soaked through from a double shift that felt like it would never end. The smell of grease clung to her hair, and her hands trembled from exhaustion, not fear, not yet. She only wanted 5 minutes of silence before heading to the bus stop 3 blocks away. That was when she saw him, a man leaning against the brick wall, half hidden in shadow, dressed far too well for a place like this. His black coat looked untouched by the rain, his posture too still, too controlled, like he did not belong to the same world as everything else around him. Emily hesitated, her instincts telling her to walk away, to mind her own business. But something about the way his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something distant and painful, made her stop. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. She took a cautious step closer. "Sir, are you okay?" Her voice sounded small against the steady rhythm of rain hitting metal dumpsters. The man did not answer. His face remained turned slightly away, but she could see the sharp line of his jaw, the unnatural stillness of his chest. No breath, no movement. A chill ran down her spine. Emily swallowed and stepped closer anyway, her heart beating faster now, not from fear, but from something else, something stubborn and human. She reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against his sleeve. Cold, not just from the rain, but something deeper, something wrong. "Sir," she tried again, her voice firmer this time. "You cannot stay out here like this." The city at night was not kind, and she knew that better than anyone. No answer. Only silence, thick and heavy. Emily hesitated for one more second, then made a decision that would change everything. She slipped off her jacket and gently draped it over his shoulders, the fabric instantly darkening as it absorbed the rain that had somehow never touched him before. "You look like you have not rested in a long time," she whispered, almost to herself. "No one deserves to be alone like this." The words lingered in the air. And then something impossible happened. The man's eyes opened. Not slowly, not naturally, but all at once, like a predator waking from a long, controlled stillness. They were not the color they should have been. They burned. A deep, unnatural red that cut through the darkness like embers in a dying fire. Emily froze. Her breath caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. The world seemed to narrow to that single moment. The rain fading into nothing, the city disappearing around them. He looked at her as if she had just done something forbidden, something that should not exist. And for the first time in centuries, the vampire king felt his heart attempt to beat. Emily could not move. Those eyes held her in place, not with force, but with something far more unsettling. Recognition, not of her face, not of her voice, but of something deeper, something buried in blood and memory that she did not even know she carried. The man straightened slowly, the jacket she had placed on his shoulders slipping slightly, as if the fabric itself did not understand how to rest on him. The rain continued to fall, but it never touched his skin. It curved away, like the world itself refused to reach him. Emily felt it then. Not fear, not yet. Something colder. Something ancient brushing against her thoughts like a whisper she could not hear. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and controlled, but carrying a weight that made the air feel heavier. Emily swallowed, forcing herself to breathe. "My name is Emily Carter. I work at the diner back there." She gestured weakly toward the flickering back door behind her. "Are you hurt?" The question sounded small the moment it left her lips. The man stared at her, unmoving, as if the concept itself did not belong to him. Hurt. The word lingered between them, strange and unfamiliar. Then his gaze dropped. Not to her face, not to her hands, to the place where her fingers had touched his sleeve. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, not hunger, something closer to disbelief. "You should not have come near me," he said quietly. Emily let out a shaky breath. "Yeah, well, you look like you needed help. That is what people do. They help each other." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her like she had just spoken a language he had not heard in centuries. "People," he repeated, almost as if testing the word. The alley grew colder. Not from the rain. From him. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, her instincts finally catching up, telling her to step back, to leave, to run. But she did not. Because despite everything, despite the impossible stillness and the unnatural eyes, there was something else there. Something tired. Something alone. You really should not be out here, she said again, softer this time. You can come inside. Just for a minute. Get out of the rain. I can get you some coffee. It is not great, but it is hot. Silence followed. Long enough for doubt to creep in. Long enough for her to regret the offer. And then he stepped forward. One step. That was all it took for the world to shift. The distance between them closed, and Emily felt her heart slam against her ribs. He was taller than she had realized, his presence overwhelming in a way she could not explain. He looked down at her, and for the first time, the red in his eyes dimmed slightly, like embers cooling beneath ash. You are not afraid, he said. It was not a question. Emily hesitated. Maybe I should be. But you have not done anything. Not yet. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything human. That is because you have not given me a reason, he said. The words should have scared her. They should have sent her running. Instead, they settled somewhere deep in her chest, heavy and unresolved. Before she could respond, the sound of an engine cut through the rain. Smooth. Quiet. Expensive. Both of them turned. A black car appeared at the end of the alley, its headlights slicing through the darkness like blades. It stopped without a sound. The doors opened in perfect unison. Figures stepped out. Tall. Still. Dressed in dark coats that seemed to absorb the light around them. Emily felt the shift instantly. The air tightened. The world sharpened. Danger. The man beside her did. Not move, but everything about him changed. The stillness became control. The quiet became command. They found me, he said softly. One of the figures approached, stopping several feet away. His eyes flicked briefly to Emily, then back to the man beside her. My lord, we have been searching for you. The city is no longer secure. There are hunters moving tonight. We need to leave. Emily blinked. Hunters. My lord. None of it made sense. She looked up at the man beside her, her voice barely above a whisper. Who are you? The figure in front of them answered before he could. You are standing next to the king of all vampires. And you touched him. Every instinct in Emily finally caught up at once. This was not just a stranger in an alley. This was something else entirely. Something ancient. Something dangerous. And somehow, for reasons she could not understand, he was still looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that had surprised him. Emily did not step back, even when every instinct inside her screamed that she should. The words echoed in her mind, heavy and impossible. King of all vampires. It sounded like something out of a movie, something distant and unreal, but nothing about this moment felt unreal anymore. The cold was real. The silence was real. And the way every person in that alley moved around him like he was the center of gravity itself, that was real too. Her eyes shifted from the man beside her to the figures standing near the car. They were watching her now, not with curiosity, but with calculation. Measuring. Deciding. One of them took a step forward, his gaze sharpening. She is human, he said quietly, but there was tension beneath his voice. My lord, we should not delay. If the hunters are close, then she is already a liability. The word landed hard. Liability. Emily felt it, the shift in the air, the subtle tightening of danger. She did not understand their world, but she understood enough to know what that word meant. She looked back at the man beside her, at the one they called king. His expression had not changed, but something in his eyes had gone still again, deeper, colder, as if a decision was forming behind them. She should leave, another figure said, his tone sharper now. Or she should be handled before this becomes a problem. Emily's heart skipped. Handled. The alley suddenly felt too small, the walls too close. For the first time, fear fully settled into her chest. Not the distant unease from before, but something immediate, something real. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, her body preparing to move even before her mind caught up. But then he spoke. No. The word cut through the tension like a blade. Quiet. Absolute. Every movement stopped. Every voice fell silent. The man stepped forward, placing himself just slightly in front of Emily, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. She is under my protection, he said. There was no anger in his voice. No raised tone. Just certainty. The kind that did not need to be questioned. The figure who had spoken first stiffened. My lord, you do not understand. If the hunters sense her connection to you, they will use it. They will use her. A pause. Heavy. Dangerous. Then they will learn what happens when they try, the king replied. Emily blinked, her breath catching. Connection. What connection? She looked down at her hands, at the fingers that had touched him only moments ago. Nothing looked different. Nothing felt different. And yet everything had changed. The man turned his head slightly, his gaze returning to her. For a moment, the world outside of that look disappeared again. You should not have done that, he said quietly. His voice had softened, but it carried something else now. Not warning. Not threat. Something closer to inevitability. Done what? She asked, her voice barely steady. Touched me. The words settled between them. Simple. Final. Before she could respond, one of the figures near the car moved quickly, pulling something from inside his coat. A small device. Black. Angular. It emitted a faint, high-pitched tone that made Emily's ears ring. The reaction was immediate. The king's entire body went rigid, his eyes flashing back to that deep, burning red. The air around him dropped in temperature so fast that Emily could see her own breath. They are here, the figure said sharply. The hunters have entered the perimeter. We need to move now. The alley changed in an instant. What had felt tense before now felt like the edge of something breaking. Emily turned toward the street, her heart pounding. She could not see anything yet, but she could feel it. Something approaching. Something wrong. The king's gaze snapped toward the mouth of the alley, his expression shifting from stillness to something far more dangerous. Focused. Lethal. Stay behind me, he said. It was not a request. Emily hesitated for half a second. Then she moved. Because whatever was coming, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The most dangerous place she could be was anywhere except right next to him. And somewhere deep inside, a thought formed that she did not want to believe. She had not just stepped into his world. She had become part of it. The first sound was not a footstep. It was silence breaking. The rain stopped hitting the ground the way it should. It bent, warped, as if something unseen had stepped into its path. Emily felt it before she saw anything. A pressure in the air. Heavy. Wrong. Like the world had tilted slightly off balance. Then a figure appeared at the far end of the alley. Not walking. Not running. Just there. 1 second empty space, the next occupied. A man dressed in dark gray, his coat marked with faint lines that caught the dim light, like etched metal. His eyes locked onto the vampire king immediately. Not on Emily. Not on the others. Only him. So it is true, the man said, his voice calm, but edged with something sharp. The king walks the streets again. And not alone. Emily's breath caught. She took a small step back, her shoulder brushing against the cold brick wall. The king did not move. His presence sharpened, like a blade drawn but not yet swung. Leave, he said quietly, not even looking at the man. This does not concern you. The hunter smiled faintly. It concerns me when the most powerful creature in the night decides to reveal himself in my city. And it concerns me even more when he chooses a human witness. His gaze shifted then, finally landing on Emily. It felt like being dissected without touch. She froze under it, every nerve in her body screaming. Such a fragile thing, the hunter murmured. And yet you stand so close to him. Do you even understand what you have touched? Emily could not answer. Her voice would not come. The king stepped forward, just enough to block that. Gaze completely. You will not look at her again, he said. The temperature dropped even further. One of the figures behind them moved slightly, ready, tense. The hunter's expression changed, just for a moment. Not fear. Respect. Then curiosity. Interesting, he said softly. I have hunted your kind for a long time. I have never seen you shield a human like this. He tilted his head. What is she to you? Silence followed. Thick. Heavy. The kind that made the air feel like it could shatter. Emily's heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could all hear it. She did not understand the question, but she felt its weight. She felt how dangerous the answer might be. The king did not respond. But something in his stillness changed. Something deeper. The hunter noticed. Of course he did. His smile widened slightly. I see, he said. Then she is the key. Before anyone could react, his hand moved. Fast. Too fast for Emily to follow. Something flew through the air, a thin object that cut through the rain like it did not belong to it. The reaction was instant. The king moved. one moment beside her, the next directly in front of her. A sharp sound rang out as the object struck something unseen, deflecting away and embedding into the brick wall with enough force to crack it. Emily flinched, her heart racing out of control. The object trembled where it had lodged, humming faintly with a strange energy. The figures near the car surged forward, forming a line, their movements precise, controlled. "My lord, we need to extract now," one of them said urgently. "This is not a single hunter. They will not send just one." As if summoned by those words, more shapes began to emerge at the edges of the alley. Shadows detaching from darkness, eyes catching the dim light. Emily turned slowly, her breath shaking. There were more of them. Not one, not two, many. The alley that had once felt small now felt like a trap closing in from all sides. The king's voice cut through the rising tension. "Stay behind me." Again, not a request. This time, Emily did not hesitate at all. She stepped closer, her back nearly brushing against him, her entire world narrowing to the space directly behind his shoulder. She could feel it now. The power in him. Not loud, not explosive, but vast, controlled, like something ancient that had decided to wake up. The hunter in front of them watched carefully, his eyes flicking between the king and Emily. "You cannot protect her forever," he said. "And once we understand what she is, even you will not be able to stop what comes next." The king did not answer, but his eyes burned brighter. And for the first time, Emily realized something that made her blood run cold. They were not here just to hunt him. They were here because of her. The alley did not feel like a place anymore. It felt like a boundary. One side was the world Emily had always known, small, ordinary, predictable. The other side was something vast and ancient that had just opened beneath her feet. And there was no going back. The hunters moved first. Not all at once, not recklessly, but with precision. Each step measured, each movement controlled, like they had done this countless times before. The one in front raised his hand slightly, and the others spread out, forming a loose circle that tightened with every second. They were not rushing. They were confident. They believed they had already won. Emily felt her breath quicken, her fingers trembling at her sides. She tried to focus on something real, something familiar, but there was nothing left to hold on to. Not the alley, not the rain, not even herself. Everything had shifted. Everything except the presence in front of her. The king did not move. He stood between her and the hunters, his posture unchanged, his stillness absolute. But the air around him was different now. It pressed outward, subtle but undeniable, like the space itself was responding to him. "You should not have come here," he said quietly. His voice carried across the alley without effort, reaching every shadow, every figure. The lead hunter smiled faintly. "We did not come for you alone," he replied. His gaze flicked past the king for a fraction of a second, just enough to remind everyone why they were really there. Emily felt it like a physical weight. She was the center of something she did not understand. "Then you came unprepared," the king answered. And in the next instant, everything broke. He moved. There was no warning, no build-up. One moment he stood still, the next he was gone. The space where he had been seemed to collapse inward as he crossed the distance between himself and the nearest hunter faster than Emily's eyes could follow. The impact was not loud. It was precise, controlled. The hunter was lifted off his feet and driven backward into the brick wall with enough force to crack the surface beneath him. The sound echoed, sharp and final. The others reacted instantly. Weapons came out. Not guns, not anything Emily recognized, but sleek devices that hummed with that same unnatural energy she had felt before. They fired. Light, not like anything she had seen, cut through the alley in thin, focused lines. The king moved through it like it did not exist. Every motion deliberate, every step exact. He did not rush. He did not waste energy. He dismantled them, one by one. Emily pressed herself back against the wall, her heart racing so fast it felt like it might tear itself apart. She could not follow what was happening, not fully. All she could see were fragments. A shadow crossing space. A hand stopping something midair. A body hitting the ground without a sound. It was not chaos. It was control. And that made it worse. The lead hunter stepped back, his calm finally cracking. "This is not possible," he muttered. The king turned toward him slowly. "It never was," he said. The words were quiet, but they carried something final in them. The hunter hesitated, just for a second, then reached for something at his belt. Smaller. Different. The moment his fingers touched it, the air shifted again. Sharper. Dangerous in a new way. Emily felt it instantly. This was not like the others. The king did too. His expression changed, not fear, not hesitation, but focus narrowing into something absolute. Do not, he said. The hunter smiled, but there was tension in it now. You protect her, he said softly. But can you protect her from what she is? Before Emily could understand what that meant, the hunter activated the device. A pulse spread outward, invisible but undeniable. It hit her first. Not physically. Something deeper. Something inside her chest reacted, sudden and violent, like a heartbeat that did not belong to her. Emily gasped, her knees buckling as a strange heat surged through her veins. Her vision blurred, the edges of the world distorting. She clutched at her chest, confused, terrified. What is happening? She whispered. The king was already moving, faster than before, but his attention was no longer on the hunters. It was on her. Always on her. And for the first time since this began, something in his expression was not controlled. It was not calm. It was something far more dangerous. Because whatever that device had awakened, it was not something the hunters had brought with them. It was something that had always been inside her. Emily could not breathe. Not because something was choking her, not because the air was gone, but because her body no longer seemed to understand how. The heat inside her chest spread outward, sharp and unfamiliar, like something breaking open from within. She dropped to her knees, her fingers digging into the wet concrete as the world tilted around her. The rain no longer felt cold. It felt distant, muted, like she was slipping out of the moment while everything else remained exactly where it was. The king reached her in less than a heartbeat. One moment he was across the alley, the next he was kneeling in front of her, his hand hovering just above her shoulder, not touching, as if even he was unsure what contact might do now. Look at me, he said. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something beneath it now. Urgency. Emily tried. She forced her head up, her vision blurring as she focused on his face. His eyes were no longer just red. They were searching, calculating, as if he was seeing something in her that no one else could. What is happening to me? She whispered, her voice breaking under the strain of whatever was tearing through her. The king did not answer immediately. That hesitation said more than words could. Around them, the alley had gone completely still. The hunters had stopped advancing. Even his own people had stepped back, their expressions tense, uncertain. They were all watching her now. Not him. Her. The lead hunter let out a quiet breath, something close to satisfaction slipping into his voice. There it is, he said softly. I was beginning to think the stories were exaggerated. The king's gaze snapped toward him, sharp enough to cut. Speak carefully, he said. The hunter only smiled faintly. You already know what she is, he replied. You felt it the moment she touched you. The pulse did not create it. It revealed it. Emily's hands trembled against the ground. None of this made sense. Stories. Revealed. What are you talking about? She said, her voice rising slightly, panic slipping through despite everything. I am just a person. I work at a diner. I pay rent. I barely make it through the week. There is nothing special about me. The words came fast, desperate, like she could force reality back into place if she said them enough times. The king looked at her again. This time, there was no distance in his gaze. No cold detachment. Only something heavy. You are wrong, he said quietly. The heat in her chest surged again, stronger this time. Emily gasped, her back arching slightly as a wave of sensation moved through her. Not pain, not exactly, but something too intense to name. Images flickered at the edge of her vision. Not memories. Not dreams. Something older. Dark halls lit by flickering light. Voices she could not understand. A symbol burned into stone, intricate and ancient. She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. Stop, she whispered. Make it stop. The king moved closer, his control slipping just enough for something raw to show beneath it. Listen to me, he said. His voice cut through the noise in her mind, grounding her just enough to focus. Do not fight it. It will only get worse. That is easy for you to say, she snapped weakly, her hands clenching as another wave hit. I do not even know what it is. Neither did you, he replied. Until tonight. That stopped her. Just enough. Emily opened her eyes again, locking onto his face. What do you mean? She asked. The king exhaled slowly, as if making a decision he had been avoiding for a very long time. Your blood is not ordinary, he said. It carries something ancient, something that has not appeared in centuries. The hunter stepped forward slightly, unable to hide his interest now. A lineage we believed extinct, he added. A key we have been searching for. Emily shook her head, disbelief flooding through her even as her body continued to react to something she could not control. That is not possible, she said. My family is normal. My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad left when I was a kid. There is nothing ancient about that. The king's gaze softened, just slightly. That is exactly how it was meant to be, he said. Hidden, protected, forgotten. Until now. Another pulse moved through her, but this time, something changed. Instead of overwhelming her, it steadied, like whatever was waking inside her was beginning to settle into place. The heat did not disappear. It focused. Emily took a shaky breath. And for the first time since it began, she did not feel like she was losing control. She felt like something was giving it to her. The hunters noticed. Of course they did. The lead hunter's expression darkened, the satisfaction fading into something more urgent. We cannot let this stabilize, he said sharply. If she fully awakens, we lose our advantage. The king stood in one fluid motion, placing himself between Emily and the hunters again. You already have, he said. His voice was calm again, controlled, but now there was something else in it. Finality. Because whatever had just awakened inside her, it was no longer something anyone could put back to sleep. The moment shifted without warning. Not in the air, not in the hunters, but inside her. Emily pushed herself up from the ground slowly, her movements unsteady at first, then gradually more certain. The trembling in her hands faded. The sharp heat in her chest did not disappear, but it changed. It no longer felt like something tearing through her. It felt like something listening. The alley seemed clearer now, sharper. She could hear things she should not be able to hear. The subtle movement of fabric as one hunter adjusted his stance. The quiet hum of those strange weapons before they fired. The controlled breathing of the figures behind her. And beneath all of it, something else. A rhythm. Slow. Deep. Ancient. She looked up. Her gaze met the king's back first, then shifted slightly as he turned just enough to look at her. For a fraction of a second, everything else faded. His eyes held hers, searching, measuring, but also something else. Recognition again. Not surprise this time. Confirmation. Stay behind me, he said. But the words did not land the same way they had before. Emily did not move. Not forward. Not back. She just stood there, her breath steadying, her pulse aligning with that strange rhythm she could now feel beneath everything. I am not the same, she said quietly. The words came out before she could stop them. The king did not argue. That was the first answer. The lead hunter noticed immediately. His expression sharpened, his stance shifting just slightly as if recalculating everything in front of him. It has begun, he said. His voice no longer held curiosity. It held urgency. Contain her now. The hunters moved again, but this time faster, less measured. They raised their weapons, the faint hum building into something sharper, more aggressive. The king stepped forward instantly, placing himself fully between Emily and the advancing line. But before he could move again, something happened that no one expected. Emily lifted her hand. Not high, not dramatically, just enough. The moment her fingers moved, the air responded. It tightened. The hum of the weapons faltered, flickering like something interfering with their signal. The hunters froze, confusion breaking through their precision for the first time. What did she do? One of them muttered. The lead hunter's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear, in realization. She is not just awakened, he said slowly. She is stabilizing faster than predicted. Emily stared at her own hand, her breath catching. She had not meant to do anything. She had not even known she could. But something inside her had reacted. Instinctively. Like it had always been there, waiting for the moment she would need it. The king watched her carefully, his attention shifting completely. Do you feel it? He asked. Emily nodded slowly. It is like everything is louder, she said. But clearer. Like I know where everything is. Even when I cannot see it. The king's expression darkened slightly. That is not awareness, he said. That is control. The words settled heavily between them. Control. The hunters did not wait any longer. The lead hunter gave a sharp signal, and this time they did not hesitate. They fired together. The alley filled with light and sound, the strange energy cutting through the space in intersecting lines meant to trap, to overwhelm, to contain. The king moved immediately, faster than before, intercepting, deflecting, dismantling. But this time, he was not the only one acting. Emily did not step back. She did not close her eyes. She did not run. She felt the lines before they reached her, felt the way they moved, the way they were aimed. And without thinking, she shifted. Not far. Just enough. The energy passed. Where she had been standing a second before, her breath hitched. She had not guessed. She had known. The king saw it. The hunters saw it. Everything changed in that instant. The lead hunter's voice cut through the chaos. Do not engage directly. Fall back. Regroup. This is no longer a controlled extraction. This is a threat escalation. The words echoed as the hunters began to retreat, their movements sharp, efficient, disappearing back into the edges of the alley as quickly as they had arrived. Within seconds, they were gone. Only the rain remained. The silence that followed was heavier than the fight. Emily stood still, her chest rising and falling slowly, the strange clarity still settling inside her. The king turned toward her fully now. For the first time since this began, there was no distance between them. Only truth. They will come back, he said. And next time, they will not come unprepared. Emily nodded faintly. I know, she said. The words surprised even her. But she did know. That same instinct, that same awareness, whispered it to her clearly. This was not over. It had only just begun. And for the first time, she understood something that changed everything. She was not the one being protected anymore. She was the reason the war had started. The rain returned to normal, but nothing else did. The alley looked the same. The cracked brick, the flickering light, the narrow space that should have felt familiar. But Emily knew it was not the same place anymore. Not for her. Not after what had just happened. She lowered her hand slowly, staring at it as if it belonged to someone else. The faint tremor that used to live in her fingers was gone. In its place was something steadier. Something controlled. She flexed her fingers once, testing it, and the air around her seemed to respond in the smallest, almost invisible way. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But she did. The king noticed too. He stepped closer, not as a protector this time, but as someone observing something rare and dangerous at the same time. You are adapting faster than you should, he said quietly. Emily let out a slow breath, trying to ground herself in something normal, something real. I do not even know what I am adapting to, she replied. That is the problem, he said. His voice did not carry fear, but it carried weight. The kind that came from knowing more than he wanted to say. Behind them, the figures who had arrived with him remained still, watching the empty ends of the alley, alert, ready, but their attention kept returning to Emily. Not with hostility now. With caution. One of them stepped forward slightly, lowering his voice. My lord, we cannot stay here. The hunters will regroup. They will bring stronger weapons. And now they know she is active. The word active lingered in the air. Emily looked up at him. Active, she repeated quietly. Like I am some kind of signal. The man did not answer her. He looked only at the king. That silence told her enough. The king turned his gaze back to her. That is exactly what you are, he said. Not a person to them. A signal. A key. A threat. Emily swallowed. The weight of that settling deeper than anything that had come before. A few minutes ago, she had been worried about catching the last bus home. Now there was no home to return to. Not the same one. What happens now, she asked. The king did not hesitate. You leave with me, he said. The certainty in his voice left no room for argument. Emily blinked, caught off guard. Leave. With you. She let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. I do not even know your name. The king paused for a fraction of a second. Then he answered. Lucien. The name settled between them, simple and heavy at the same time. Emily nodded faintly. Okay, Lucien, she said. You just told me I am some kind of signal that people want to hunt. And your solution is that I leave everything and go with a man I met 5 minutes ago who may or may not be able to control the entire night. Lucien did not react to the edge in her voice. He only watched her, calm, steady. Not May, he said. I can. That should have scared her more than anything else. Instead, it grounded her in a strange way. Because at least it was honest. Emily looked past him for a moment, toward the empty alley, toward the world that suddenly felt very far away. Then she looked back at him. And if I say no, she asked. Lucien stepped closer, Not threatening, not forcing, but close enough that she could feel that same cold presence again, steady and controlled. Then they will come for you, he said. Not just here. Everywhere. Your home. Your work. Anyone who knows you. They will not stop. And I will not always be there first. The words were quiet, but they landed harder than anything else he had said. Emily closed her eyes for a second, the reality of it pressing in. Her life, the small, fragile structure she had built, could not survive this. Not as it was. When she opened her eyes again, something had shifted. Not fear. Not panic. Acceptance. Then I guess I do not really have a choice, she said. Lucien studied her for a moment, as if measuring the weight of that decision. Then he nodded once. You always have a choice, he said. You just chose correctly. One of his men stepped forward again, gesturing toward the waiting car. We need to move now, he said. Emily hesitated for half a second, glancing once more at the alley, at the place where everything had changed. Then she turned and walked toward the car. Each step felt like crossing a line she could never step back over. Lucien followed just behind her, his presence steady, silent. As the car door opened and she stepped inside, Emily realized something she had not fully understood until now. She was not leaving her world behind. She was entering his. And whatever waited for her on the other side, it was not going to be small. The car door closed with a quiet, final sound that seemed louder than anything that had happened in the alley. Emily sat still, her hands resting on her lap, her fingers curled slightly, as if they still remembered the air bending around them. The interior of the car was silent, insulated from the world outside, but she could still feel everything. The motion of the engine before it even started. The presence of the people sitting across from her. And most of all him. Lucien entered the car a second later, taking the seat beside her with a smooth, controlled movement. The door shut, and without a word, the vehicle began to move. No sudden acceleration. No noise. Just motion. Emily stared forward at first, watching. The blurred reflection of city lights through the darkened window. Streets she had walked 100 times looked different now. Smaller. Distant. Like they belonged to someone else. You are not going to explain anything, are you? She said finally. Her voice was steady, but there was tension beneath it. Lucien did not answer immediately. He watched her instead, as if measuring how much truth she could handle in this moment. Then he spoke. There are things you need to understand. But not all at once. Emily let out a quiet breath, shaking her head slightly. That sounds like a very polite way of saying this is about to get worse. It is, he said. The honesty landed heavier than any reassurance would have. Emily turned her head, looking at him fully now. Up close, in the dim interior light, he looked less like something untouchable and more like something carefully contained. That made him more dangerous, not less. You said my blood carries something ancient, she said. What does that even mean? Lucien's gaze did not waver. It means your lineage is tied to a force older than my kind, he said. Something that predates the current order of the night. Something both sides have tried to erase. Emily frowned, confusion tightening her expression. Both sides. Vampires and hunters, he clarified. They have been at war longer than your history records. But there was a third element once. A balance. Something that kept both sides in check. Emily felt a strange chill move through her, even inside the sealed car. And that something is me, she said quietly. Lucien did not answer right away. That silence was enough. The realization settled slowly, heavily. That is why they call me a key, she continued. Because I am not just part of this. I change it. Yes, Lucien said. The single word carried more weight than anything else he had said so far. Emily leaned back slightly, her mind racing, trying to fit this new reality into something that made sense. It did not. Nothing about it did. So what happens when I fully, what did he call it, stabilize, she asked. Lucien's expression darkened slightly. Then the balance shifts, he said. And whoever controls that shift controls what comes next. The words hung in the air between them. Control. That word again. Emily's hands tightened slightly in her lap. You think that is going to be you? She said. It was not an accusation. It was a question. Lucien held her gaze. I think I am the only one who will not try to use you, he replied. Emily studied him for a long moment. In any other situation, she would not believe that. Not from a stranger. Not from someone this powerful. But tonight had stripped away the normal rules of trust. Now it was not about who seemed safe. It was about who had already chosen not to harm her when they easily could have. The car slowed slightly as it turned onto a quieter road, the city lights fading into something more distant, more controlled. Emily noticed it immediately. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere they cannot reach you easily," Lucien said. "Not yet." Emily glanced out the window again, watching as the buildings changed, the streets emptier, the atmosphere shifting. It felt like crossing another invisible line. "You keep saying not yet," she said, "like you are buying time." Lucien did not deny it. "That is exactly what I am doing," he said. "Because once the others realize what you are becoming, time will be the only advantage we have left." Emily let that sink in, her thoughts quieter now, more focused. The fear had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. It was no longer panic. It was awareness. "Then we should not waste it," she said. Lucien looked at her again, something almost approving flickering in his expression. "No," he said, "we should not." And as the car disappeared into the darker edges of the city, Emily understood something with a clarity that left no room for doubt. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about what she would become, and who would stand with her when she did. The car did not stop at a building Emily recognized. It did not slow near a crowded street or a place with lights and people and noise. Instead, it turned onto a long, narrow road lined with tall iron gates and stone walls that seemed older than anything else in the city. The moment the vehicle approached, the gates opened without a sound, as if they had been waiting. Emily felt it again, that subtle shift in the air, like crossing from one world into another. The car moved forward, deeper into the property, until the city disappeared completely behind them. In its place stood a structure that did not belong to modern time. Stone. Dark. Massive. It rose from the ground like it had always been there, untouched by everything around it. Emily stared through the window, her breath slowing as something inside her responded to the place. Not fear. Recognition. "Why does this feel familiar?" she asked quietly. Lucien did not look surprised. "Because your blood remembers what your mind does not," he said. The car came to a smooth stop at the base of wide steps leading up to the entrance. The doors opened, and the night air felt different here. Colder, but cleaner. Still, as if nothing dared move without permission. Emily stepped out slowly, her eyes taking in every detail. The stone beneath her feet. The faint symbols carved into the walls, almost invisible unless you knew to look for them. The silence that was not empty, but watchful. "This is your home," she said, not as a question. Lucien stepped beside her. "It is where I rule," he corrected. The difference mattered. Emily glanced at him, then back at the structure. Of course it did. They moved inside together. The doors closed behind them with a deep, echoing sound that seemed to seal the outside world away completely. The interior was even more overwhelming. High ceilings. Long corridors lit by warm, low light that flickered softly against the stone. Everything felt deliberate. Designed not for comfort, but for presence. Power. Emily took a few steps forward, her senses adjusting again. The same awareness from before returned, stronger now. She could feel movement beyond the walls. People. Not human. Watching. Waiting. "They know I am here," she said quietly. "Yes," Lucien replied. "They felt you the moment you crossed the threshold." Emily stopped walking. She turned slowly to face him. "And what exactly do they think I am?" she asked. Lucien held her gaze. "That depends on who you ask," he said. "Some will see you as a threat, others as an opportunity, and some," he paused briefly, "as something they thought was lost forever." The words settled into her chest, heavy and unavoidable. Before she could respond, movement echoed from the far end of the hall. Figures approached, not rushing, not hesitant, but with purpose. They wore dark clothing, similar to the ones who had come to the alley, but their expressions were different. More controlled, more aware. They stopped several feet away, lowering their heads slightly in acknowledgement of Lucien. Then their eyes shifted to Emily. The air tightened instantly. "My lord," one of them said, his voice calm but careful. "We felt the disturbance. Reports are already spreading. The hunters have confirmed activation." Emily felt that word again. Activation. It no longer sounded foreign. It sounded like a declaration. Lucien stepped slightly forward, placing himself just enough between her and them. "She is under my protection," he said. The room seemed to hold its breath. One of the figures hesitated before speaking again. "Protection is not the concern, my lord. Control is." Emily's gaze sharpened. She stepped slightly to the side, enough that she was no longer fully behind Lucien. "I am standing right here," she said. "You can talk to me." The room went still. That was not expected. Lucien glanced at her, not stopping her, not correcting her. The figure who had spoken earlier studied her more carefully now. "You may not understand what you are becoming," he said, "but your presence here will change everything." "It already has," Emily replied. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was not. The man held her gaze for a moment longer, then inclined his head slightly. "That is precisely why the council must be informed," he said. The word landed harder than anything else. "Council." Emily looked at Lucien, searching for something in his expression. This time, she found it. Not fear, not uncertainty, but tension. Controlled, but undeniable. "What council?" she asked. Lucien did not answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was quieter than before. "The ones who decide what happens when something like you appears," he said. Emily felt the weight of that settle deeper than anything else so far. "Something like you." She took a slow breath, her awareness sharpening again, her instincts aligning with something she was only beginning to understand. "Then they are going to decide wrong," she said softly. The room did not react. But Lucien did, just slightly. And for the first time since she had met him, something in his expression suggested that she might not be the one who needed protection anymore. The word council did not echo in the hall, but it settled into every shadow like something alive. Emily felt it in the way the air shifted, in the way every figure present became more still, more controlled, as if even the walls were listening now. No one spoke immediately. No one moved. It was the kind of silence that did not come from hesitation. It came from calculation. Lucien stepped forward just enough to reclaim the center of the space, without raising his voice. "The council will not be summoned without my command," he said. His tone was calm, but absolute. The figure who had spoken earlier did not lower his gaze this time. "My lord, with respect, this is no longer a matter of personal discretion. Her emergence has already been detected beyond this city. If we delay, others will act without us." Emily watched the exchange carefully, her senses sharper than they had ever been. She could feel the tension beneath the words, the unspoken lines of power that ran deeper than anything visible. This was not just about her. This was about control, about who held it, and who was about to lose it. She took a step forward, not away from Lucien, but beside him. The movement was small, but it shifted the entire room. "You keep talking like I am not here," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something new beneath it. Not defiance. Authority. The kind that did not ask permission to exist. The figures in front of her did not react outwardly, but Emily felt it. Their attention sharpened, their awareness adjusting to her in a way it had not before. The man inclined his head slightly again, but this time it was different. Not just acknowledgement of Lucien. Of her. "Then perhaps you should understand what is coming," he said. Emily held his gaze. "Then explain it," she replied. Lucien did not interrupt. That was the second answer. The man drew a slow breath. "The council is not a single ruler," he said. "It is an assembly of the oldest and most powerful among our kind. They do not act quickly, but when they do not question their own decisions." Emily listened, her expression unchanged, but inside, everything sharpened further. "And what do they do with something like me?" she asked. The man hesitated. Just briefly. That hesitation was enough. "They contain it," he said. The word hit harder than anything else. Not protect. Not guide. Contain. Emily felt the shift inside her again, not violent this time, but focused. Controlled. Like something responding to a threat it understood instinctively. Lucien's voice cut through the moment. "That will not happen," he said. The certainty in it left no room for interpretation. The man's gaze moved to him. "My lord, if the council determines she is unstable, your authority will not override their ruling." That was the first time something in Lucien's expression darkened fully. Not anger. Something colder. "Then they will have to reconsider what they think they control," he said. The words did not raise in volume, but they changed the room. Completely. Emily felt it. The shift from negotiation to something else. Something closer to challenge. The other figures exchanged brief, silent glances. Not fear, but awareness that something had crossed a line. Emily exhaled slowly, grounding herself in the clarity that had been building inside her since the alley. She did not feel like she was standing in the wrong place anymore. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. You said they decide what happens when something like me appears, she said, her voice calm. But what if they are wrong? The man looked at her again, more carefully now than ever before. Then everything changes, he said. Emily nodded faintly. That matched what she was already beginning to understand. Lucien turned slightly toward her, his presence no longer shielding, but aligned. If the council is called, he said quietly, they will demand proof of what you are. And they will test you. Emily met his gaze. What kind of test? She asked. Lucien held her eyes for a moment longer than usual. The kind that reveals truth, he said. Whether you are a balance or a threat. The words settled between them. Not as a warning, as a path. Emily felt the weight of it, but it did not crush her. It steadied her. Then let them test me, she said. The room went completely still. This time, not from tension, from something else. Recognition. Because the way she said it did not sound like someone preparing to be judged. It sounded like someone ready to change the outcome. Lucien watched her closely, and for the first time, something in his expression shifted into something unfamiliar. Not control, not calculation, something closer to belief. And somewhere deep, in the stone walls of that place, something ancient seemed to respond. The chamber was not designed for comfort. Emily understood that the moment she stepped inside. The walls rose high above her, carved from dark stone that seemed to absorb the light instead of reflecting it. Symbols lined the surface, faint but unmistakable, the same patterns she had seen at the entrance. Only here they were stronger, older, more deliberate. They pulsed at the edge of her awareness, not glowing, not moving, but present in a way she could feel rather than see. The doors closed behind her with a deep sound that echoed through the space like a final decision. Lucien did not stand beside her this time. He remained at the threshold, watching, not intervening. This was something she had chosen, and something she would have to face. At the far end of the chamber, a raised platform stretched outward, and upon it stood figures that did not need introduction. Emily felt them before she fully saw them. Their presence pressed against her senses, ancient and heavy, like the weight of something that had existed far longer than it should have. The council. They did not move as she approached. They did not speak. They simply watched. Emily forced herself to take another step forward, then another, her breathing steady despite the pressure building around her. Each step felt like walking deeper into something that had been waiting for her long before she was born. You stand before us willingly, one of them finally said. The voice did not come from a single direction. It filled the chamber, low and resonant. Emily stopped, lifting her head. Yes, she answered. There was no hesitation in her voice. A murmur passed through the unseen edges of the chamber, subtle but present. You understand what that means, another voice followed. You submit yourself to judgment. The word judgment hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Emily felt the instinct to resist it, to reject the idea that anyone else could decide what she was. But she did not speak against it. Not yet. I understand that you think you can decide what I am, she said instead. The room went still. Not offended. Not angered. Interested. The presence of the council shifted slightly, like something adjusting its focus. Then show us, the first voice said. The moment the words were spoken, the chamber reacted. The symbols along the walls seemed to tighten, the air thickening as something unseen activated around her. Emily felt it immediately. The same force that had surged through her in the alley, but stronger now, more controlled, like it was being guided, tested, pulled into the open. Her breath caught, but she did not step back. Not this time. The pressure increased, pressing against her chest, her mind, her senses. Images flickered again at the edge of her vision, but clearer now. The same halls, the same symbols, the same ancient presence she could not name. It was not trying to overwhelm her. It was trying to reveal her. Lucien remained still behind her, his gaze fixed, his control absolute, but there was something else there now. Not interference. Trust. The council watched in silence as the energy in the room continued to rise. What you carry is not new, one of them said. It is forgotten. The words resonated through her, triggering something deeper. Emily's hands clenched at her sides as the pressure reached its peak. For a moment, it felt like she would break under it. Like whatever was inside her would tear free without her control. Then she remembered something simple. Not ancient. Not powerful. Just human. Breathe. The thought grounded her instantly. She drew in a slow breath, steadying herself, not fighting the energy, not resisting it, letting it settle instead. The change was immediate. The pressure did not disappear. It aligned. The chaotic surge inside her shifted into something focused, something that moved with her instead of against her. The symbols along the walls responded, not flaring, but quieting, as if recognizing something they had not felt in a very long time. The chamber fell into complete silence. The council did not speak for several seconds. Then one voice, quieter than the others, broke through. "This is not instability," it said. "This is balance." The words settled into the space like something final. Emily opened her eyes fully, her breathing calm now, her body no longer trembling. She looked up at the figures before her, no longer feeling small beneath their presence. Not equal. Not yet. But not beneath them either. "Then you already know your answer," she said. The silence that followed was different this time. Not heavy. Not tense. Decisive. And somewhere behind her, for the first time since she had entered the chamber, Lucien allowed himself to move forward. The chamber did not erupt into noise or celebration. It settled. The weight that had pressed against Emily since the moment she entered did not disappear, but it changed. It no longer felt like judgment. It felt like recognition. The council remained still, their presence vast and unreadable, but something in the space had shifted permanently. The balance had been acknowledged. And that acknowledgement carried consequences. The voice that had spoken last rose again, quieter now, but more certain than before. "The balance has returned," it said. Not as it was, but as it must be. Emily stood her ground, her breathing steady, her awareness sharp, but no longer overwhelming. For the first time since the alley, she felt fully present inside her own body. Not reacting, not surviving, choosing. "What happens now?" she asked. The question was simple, but it carried the weight of everything that had led her here. The council did not answer immediately. When they did, the words were final. "You will not be contained," the first voice said. "But neither will you stand alone. The war that has been held in tension will shift, and you will stand at its center." Emily absorbed that without flinching. It was not a threat. It was truth. Lucien stepped forward then, no longer holding back, his presence aligning beside her instead of behind her. She felt it immediately. Not protection. Partnership. The council acknowledged him with a slight shift in the air. "You choose to stand with her," the voice said. Lucien did not hesitate. "I do," he replied. The certainty in his voice matched hers. "Then understand what that means," another voice added. "If the balance breaks, it will not be the hunters who fall first. It will be you." Lucien met that without hesitation. "Then it will not break," he said. Silence followed, but it was not resistance. It was acceptance. The chamber began to quiet, the symbols along the walls dimming back into stillness, as if the test had concluded. Emily let out a slow breath she did not realize she had been holding. It was over. Not the war. Not what she had become. But this moment. This decision. Lucien turned slightly toward her, his voice lower now, meant only for her. "You stood against them without fear," he said. Emily shook her head faintly. "I was afraid," she replied. "I just did not let it decide for me." Something in his expression softened, just slightly. "That is why you are what you are," he said. They turned together as the chamber doors began to open again, the outside corridors waiting beyond. The world had not changed on the surface. The stone was still the same, the air still cold, but everything beneath it had shifted. As they walked forward, Emily paused for just a moment at the threshold. She looked back once, not at the council, but at the space where she had stood alone only minutes before. She was not that person anymore. Not the girl worrying about rent. Not the one taking shortcuts through dark alleys after long shifts. That life had not been taken from her. It had led her here. She stepped forward. Lucien moved beside her, his presence steady, no longer distant or untouchable, equal in a way that had not existed before. Outside, the night stretched wide and silent, but it no longer felt like something to fear. It felt like something waiting. The hunters would return. The war would rise. The balance would be tested. But this time, it would not be decided without her. Emily lifted her gaze, her voice quiet but certain. "Then we do not wait for them to come," she said. Lucien looked at her, something sharper now in his expression. "What do you propose?" he asked. Emily did not hesitate. "We change the rules first," she said. The words hung in the air between them, simple, but carrying something undeniable. Lucien's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something close to approval. Then let us begin, he said. And as they stepped into the night together, the balance that had once been lost did not just return. It chose its side.